I'm Steph Stricklen with GeekWire Studios here at AWS reInvent. Happy to introduce you today to our next two panelists. This is going to be an engaging and very important conversation. We've heard a lot about Gen AI. We're going to talk about how it impacts the manufacturing space, but let me introduce you to our two guests. We have Doug, who is the Global Lead of Business Development for Smart Factories and Industry 4.0 at AWS. We also have Sharath Prasad, who is the Associate Vice President of IoT at Cognizant. Thank you, gentlemen, both for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Doug Bellin, where did you start before you came to AWS, or have you been here before?
If I go back when I started my career coming out of grad school, I was actually working for a steel company on the north side of Chicago. From there, I just fell in love with the manufacturing environment, did a food manufacturer, I've done internet security and other things from that standpoint. And the last 15 years or so, really looking at it, how do we understand the problems that customers are looking for, and then working back into what technology that is going to help solve it from there.
And the fact that you have hands-on experience in the sector is wonderful. What a great asset to have, especially as these last 6 years have really ramped up. How did you get your start?
Mine is a slightly different story to yours. Began on the other side of the world. So I grew up in India and I started my career after my basic engineering degree with a power generation company. So here I am, 2023, and with Cognizant, I have this great opportunity to drive this IT/OT convergence strategies for different classes of manufacturers. So I have this opportunity to work with life sciences, pharma companies, discrete industrial equipment companies, automotives, and I go back to my power utility favorite customers as well. So
you can bet that we're going to talk about some of those real world examples. And the thing that is on the tip of everybody's tongue here is Gen AI. And I'd really like to know from your perspective, and we'll start with you and then come to you. Tell me a little bit about how this impacts manufacturing. What do you see?
I think Gen AI, we're at an early stage in this marketplace. Part of the problem with manufacturing with Gen AI is the data accessibility. There's data everywhere in a manufacturer, but it's locked down, it's stranded, it's not able to understand what it means. You look at a lot of tags that get spit off of a machine, and it's a code. So how does a human being read that and make sense of it? Well, that's where Gen AI is going to start to come to play, is say, this is the code, this is the human language of that code. Now, a lot of that already exists, as in I've got a table over here, but how do you make that faster and accessible, especially with what we're seeing and we've been talking about forever about the graying of the workforce, the gray tsunami that's been hitting us for years. Well, now finally people are starting to retire. And they're taking that knowledge that they've had of being in that facility for 20 years, and now you have somebody coming in with 3 weeks of experience and you're throwing them at a machine. They're freaking out. And they're going, how do I fix this? How do I do something from that standpoint? So if we can help them with the data, help them with what's happening, and give them better access to that knowledge. So right now I'm seeing a lot of our customers building knowledge management tools beyond where knowledge management has been, but then building that into their operational aspect. Help reduce time to be able to find a statement that says what the problem is. Help to find out the log files. What do those log files tell you? Help to go into like a PDF file, which is 600 pages long, and find the 3 paragraphs of how do I fix that machine. Saves time, gets people back up and running. But I think there's so much more that we're just starting to talk about. So it's really early days, but there's some really fun things that have been happening.
I can almost see you ready to jump in, because these problems that have solutions is part of what you offer. Right?
Absolutely. See, I can't agree with Doug more than my vigorous nodding, right? Industries have been doing a lot of work in creating islands of automation now. They've successfully managed to pull out data from equipment, data from processes, build some sort of a dotted line connection from one system to another, right? Hence the term islands of automation. Now, what we see with generative AI is that ability to make those hard lines and create some solutions and something more actionable to users. And these users come in different personas. It could be an operator on the shop floor who's got a very limited role to play, but a critical one. And at the other end of the spectrum, it could be a global operations vice president who needs to know what is happening in her plants and benchmark from one place to another. Generative AI as a technology gives that ability for both of those two ends of a book, two bookends, right? both of these guys can actually now start dissolving these islands of automation and create some very specific actionable workflows. So that's where we see generative AI coming in. And therefore, from our perspective, we look at even generative AI taking a step-by-step approach, right? The initial use cases could be pulling out those 3 relevant paragraphs from a 600-page manual. So you're essentially going to summarize a set of things that people can actually get done. And that summarization is an important aspect. Otherwise, you look at every starting shift in a factory, there are 6 people coming together: a quality manager, a parts and inventory manager, a maintenance engineer. All of these guys come together and try to plan what needs to happen over the next 8 to 10 hours. Now, generative AI can actually help them get to that task much faster and get to the production job faster.
The summary that you described then sets you up for really what is that's the foundation. Now we're going to predict. Am I correct? And then how does that factor in? You've taken the nugget that you need, you've laid the foundation, that hopefully then helps you set up for that next stage, correct?
Absolutely.
Then what?
Absolutely. So once you're able to summarize things, and that shows that you've connected various islands of information or islands of automation together, and now you start creating digital twins. And this digital twin is a very, very commonly used terminology. You can actually decompose that into various sub-twins, right? It could be a process twin, where you're looking at a molding process, molding operation, creating a twin of that. It could be an asset twin. You look at a specific motor or a pump or some asset like that, create a twin for that. And you create a complete twin for the complete facility. So it's a facility twin. So you get different layers of digital twins that are actually becoming, that start to prescribe or predict what you need to be doing next. So that's a natural progression for generative AI to take once the summarization is completed. And then that's not the end of the story. Yesterday, even in the keynotes, we heard about agents, expert agents. These agents are blocks of technology that can actually start looking into the future and start forecasting things. What else do you need to do in your supply chain? Can you optimize your complete, a source of input material is getting delayed, on a ship somewhere. What do you do then? You start forecasting those things, and then that feeds into your digital twin, and that feeds into your summarization. So it's a complete end-to-end sequence of insights, data, and actionable workflows.
Did he say the magic word digital twin? You did, didn't you?
Several times.
Can you do me a favor, and for folks who are maybe unfamiliar with that, because it is truly where I think, and please do correct me if I'm wrong, where Gen AI may be able to provide remarkable transformation when the data that it is able to access, it comes into bear. So what is a digital twin in the manufacturing world?
If you ask the normal people, not us experts, quote unquote, I put experts in quotes on purpose, but you ask anybody out in the world to describe a digital twin, you talk to 4 people, you'll get 9 different definitions. So as you said, is it a process digital twin? In other words, if I have a product coming in and the raw material coming in, finished goods coming out, what is the process? How do I digitize it and understand what it did? And then how can I potentially simulate new things to maybe help speed it up, slow it down, better quality from that standpoint? That's one. Well, then you can have an asset digital twin. In that process, you have a machine which you can now digitize and pull the data off of, and you don't have to be in front of that machine to see what's happening on that. Again, simulate what's going on with it, improve the functions, improve the capabilities, or change what's happening to see what's going to go on before you make the change in the field. Well, there's an asset twin. You can keep going. Everything's got a digital twin on it. Ultimately what it is, it's a digital representation of a physical asset, which could be a dashboard. A lot of people think digital twin has to be a 3D representation of models and everything from that standpoint, that I can go into the metaverse and walk through it and see and understand what's going on, which is a great vision, but we have to take baby steps first. And sometimes, to a lot of my basic customers in the real world, it's give me a dashboard so I don't have to walk out the floor and go see what's going on with it.
How do you partner together to help solve these? Manufacturing strikes me as an industry that is very much so comfortable on the rails. What works, works. And so how do you partner together to help offer manufacturers new ways of thinking about their business?
You want to go first?
Well, I'll go first, and then you'll probably correct me. I'll stay up from the stand. Well, I think take where AWS fits in this marketplace. We come up with building blocks in fundamental areas, which then are used by partners to build solutions and offerings for customers. A lot of my time is working with customers to understand what the problems are, and then working with partners to help understand, because I may have a bigger view than what some partners may have across more industries, across more parts of the globe, and ultimately saying, hey, let's expand that scope of what you just built from an application standpoint. So in this space, we're not looking at full end stack applications, but working with the partners to deliver those, because that's where the acceleration is going to be. At the same time, really working with that partnership to understand what we need to do better for the partner to help them accelerate as well. If I look back, it's that IT-OT convergence, and we've got partners that have great OT skills. AWS is an IT company. Let's be brutally honest with ourselves from that standpoint. We have great pockets of SMEs and experience, and we actually, because of Amazon, have great operational experience of what we do. But we need to be able to take those experiences and work with the right partners who live in that range, live in the operation side of the business that says, these are what we need to do differently outside of where our normal comfort zone is.
Yeah, but luckily I completely agree with you, Doug. So
no correction required.
No correction required. So the way for us is, from my perspective, at least my lens, is that, we've been doing work with customers in the factory floor for a long time now. But, for us to actually realize the dream or the promise of digital, we need a partnership with AWS, because, they have the right kind of tools that are scalable. And everybody has to look at scalability, reusability of technology components. So that's what we do together. So we get together, our technical people smarter than us, at least smarter than me, get together, and they actually create these architectures that can repurpose themselves or reuse themselves from one setting to another. So we create all of those foundational technology components, and we build those connections for these to work in different classes of industries. So that's what we spend a lot of time before coming to an event like this, right? You see and hear of generative AI so much here, but we started working together on developing use cases for generative AI maybe about 6 to 7 months ago. So we would have defined a problem statement. We go to a customer, validate that this problem really strikes a chord there. We identify a very specific persona within the factory. I spoke earlier about, it could be a worker in a cell, or it could be an operations manager. So we pick a specific persona. We understand what problem they're currently grappling with, and where technology and where AWS and Cognizant can come together. And we create those technology components. We build those connectors that can actually work in the shop floor. We prove the technology in our own labs, and then we take it to prime time, and then we start solving customer problems there. So that's our collaboration.
How do you secure the data? Where does security fit into this conversation, as people are, and industry is very keen, particularly life sciences with a lot of R&D, but really anybody wanting to make sure that what they're doing stays secure?
So security is a philosophy that's built into every aspect. Right from the time we walk a plant floor, we got to look at the points of potential vulnerabilities and threats. So we actually help customers in defining a complete OT cybersecurity philosophy that they must adopt to. And then, at every point, be it at a PLC level, we build, we have the understanding of the right kind of security standards to comply with. So we actually build those into the system. And then every bit of data that comes out can bite if you don't secure them. So we work closely with AWS, with their platform services, to ensure that any bit of data that goes out of a plant to the cloud is secure. So it's built into the complete philosophy of digital transformation. It's a very broad answer. Happy to get into more details, but
it works. It's something that for AWS has been something from the very beginning that's been crucial. So it makes sense that you would expect your partners would approach it with the same level of significance.
With security for us, and we hear it all the time at our keynotes and talk to any executive, and security is day zero. It's not day one, it is day zero. It's how we fundamentally had to grow and had to build. Part of it is earning the trust of the customers that we can do security better than they can. Historically in manufacturing, everybody would always say, my plant is secure. Why? Because we weren't even connected to the network. Well, then that was proven wrong many times, because There was the one proven case where somebody was dropping thumb drives out in the parking lot, and then they would go in and plug the thumb drives in and take things down. People are always going to work around the system for security, so you have to be able to understand where the security profile is now, and then what is adjusting the security profile, which is a potential issue as you go forward. Right now, manufacturing is the largest attack vector, which is crazy, which is scary, and it should scare everybody. It is, because financial services and other people have been thinking about security since day one. And the thought of security in manufacturing was, we're not connected, so we don't have to worry about it. If you think a lot of the machinery in the world that's out there, the average machine age is about 23 years old. There's a lot of machinery still running Windows 3.1, Windows 95, DOS, right? There's some DOS out there that is right.
Brought a smile to his face.
Well, how do you securitize? Security for that in the IT world is upgrade it. Well, I've got a machine. I was just working with a customer that does the steel industry. They have a kiln which is 50 years old, and the last time they updated it was to go to DOS. So those are issues that we have to be aware of and build from an architectural standpoint to help securitize those, but still also be allowed to get the data off of that to help change their business.
It's interesting you talked about the steel industry, the kiln. I want to talk about some other case examples where Gen AI in particular has already been implemented. Can either of you just give me an example or two for folks to understand where we're at right now?
We've got one customer right now that has built a knowledge management avatar for the workers on the floor. So they can either use their phone, if they're able to use the phone on the floor, and ask a question, just like an Alexa type of application, but they use kind of the same back end, but it does knowledge management. Kind of what we were describing before. What is the issue? How do I solve it? So they've gone and built taken that whole document repository and digitized it, and then put the vector on top of it in the graph database and all the other fun things which beyond my technical knowledge, but be able to drive those capabilities for that knowledge worker in the field. Again, what they want to be able to do is not just make it easier for the workers to find that knowledge, but make this an industry that looks cool and exciting for them to want to work for. And that's the problem with this industry, is right now it's not seen as the glamorous job to go to. So if we can help companies kind of build these cool apps that people want to use, it's gonna start to go, I want to go do that as well. Let's go have fun with that and make that happen.
It's such an exciting time to see something that, again, can speed up innovation, as well as help make workers safer, as well as help reduce costs and provide value back. I think you're such an interesting time to be involved in this sector, maybe more so than ever.
Absolutely, I agree with you, Steph. In our case, I'd like to talk about one example. We work with an elevator manufacturer, and there the problem that we solved and the persona that we worked with was a field engineer. This is the engineer that goes out to install locations where there are elevators. They're trying to troubleshoot and solve problems. And imagine, they traditionally used to go with thick volumes of service manuals. Then they got digitized and they took an iPad, which had 600 pages again, and with the also additional risk of running out of battery power or dropping down and breaking. So we tried to create a solution for them with generative AI, where the technician can wear a headset, talk to a system. How do you like that? It completely changes the way you operate, right? You talk to the system and ask what's going wrong, what happened in the last 3 hours, and then the system is going to tell you that these were the top 2 or 3 issues that were there, and then the engineer can solve those problems, also with the support of technology, pulling out what needs to be looked for, what are the 5 different things that you should check as you're going through a repair process. Very similar thing we are also doing for an agro food processing company, and there we are looking at assets such as pumps, and we are working very closely with AWS in trying to solve those problems. So we're looking at issues like pump cavitation, and how can a non-pump expert go and solve that problem is the task that we have taken. It's not yet deployed, we are getting there, but those are the kinds of exciting new problems that we are solving, or new ways of solving problems that are traditional.
At the risk of maybe offending elevator technicians, you've made that job sound very sexy. I would love to be able to talk to the elevator. But I make light of it, but it really goes to illustrate what you were talking about in a real world example.
Well, right now the elevator would kick off a code, and the code would be like E3 42 89 72.
Like, let me get my iPad out.
And what does that mean? Right now, it's like, hey, you know what, Doug? I'm having trouble with this. Yeah, wait, the machine just talked to me. Uh-oh. But that's where we're heading towards.
Yeah, we really are. This has been an enlightening and important conversation. Doug, Sharath, thank you so much for making the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Pleasure is ours. Thanks for the time.
I'm Steph Stricklen. You've been watching GeekWire Studios.